Yeah. So welcome to today's lecture. Last class, remember we have done an overview of wireless communications. We understood that fading is the main problem in wireless communication, and we saw that diversity is a very nice technique of solving the fading problem by providing independent paths of the transmit signal you want to send across to the receiver by multiple ways. So among that, then we have concentrated on antenna diversity. So, and we have developed certain notions of that. So we have developed this class. What we will do is we will take it further from the description of MIMO we had given last class. So I hope all of you have the MIMO channel model in front of you. MIMO slow fading flat. So Y is equal to Hx plus eta channel that we developed last class. So that's where we start. So the agenda for today's class is two things. We would like to see what is the throughput performance of MIMO communication system. What is the advantage we get by providing multiple replicas, by giving multiple antennas at the transmitter and multiple antennas at the receiver. Okay, and while doing this, we'll also clarify one link that I had just stated last class. When I went from erasure channel to fading channel, I just said that you can substitute epsilon with respect to 1 by gamma. Today we will also justify that. Okay, why that substitution is proper. Okay, so capacity of a CISO channel AWGN, that is non-fading channel, wired communication. So your received signal Y is basically equal to the transmitted signal X plus the noise term. Okay. So Y is equal to X plus eta. That is the AWGN channel model. And we all know from the Shannon's famous formula, all books give you that the capacity of AWGN channel is a function of the signal to noise ratio, gamma, and log to 1 plus gamma in bits per channel use. Okay. So what does capacity tell you? It tells us that if you are transmitting at a rate less than capacity, then there exists a code such that the probability of error will tend to 0 when n, the block length of the code, tends to infinity. Okay. So or error-free communication is possible if rate is less than capacity. That's the main conclusion, and it's a very important thing. This led to the entire development of communication itself as a very important derivation that Shannon gave in 1948. Okay. Now there is one important point for the CISO channel. If you double the SNR, that is you add 3 dB more power, what will happen? So the previous capacity in bits per channel used is log to 1 plus gamma. At high SNRs, I am doubling the capacity, or I am doubling the signal to noise ratio gamma. So instead of gamma, I am substituting 2 gamma. So what would be the increase in capacity? Quite straightforward. So when gamma is very large, this 1 becomes very small, so I can neglect that. So it is now log 2 gamma, and when I substitute instead of gamma 2 gamma, what I get is log 2 plus the capacity of at gamma. You see, so it means you are adding one additional bit. Okay, so to add an extra, get 1 bit extra throughput, you need to double the SNR, double the power. So it is quite costly. Remember, this is AWGN channel. Now, let us see what happens to a CISO fading channel. So in the fading channel, in the previous model, you have additional term H. Okay, H is your fading coefficient. H is your fading coefficient. and the conditional capacity, that is given H, the capacity C now is a function of H and the SNR and is given by this formula. And this is quite straightforward, H square gamma. So in the previous AWGN formula, we have substituted what is called as the instantaneous SNR. So in instantaneous is the SNR for a given channel use that is seen by the receiver. So it can be seen as mod of what was transmitted, the square of what was transmitted is H square, signal power transmitted, receive power transmitted. So you see it is SNR multiplied by the channel power at that time instant. Okay, so keep that in mind. Instantaneous power is the SNR instantaneous SNR is the SNR at that point or at that channel use, where the SNR is multiplied by the channel square power of the channel, that is H square. Now this CH gamma, okay, this conditional capacity is a random variable because H is a random variable. So a function of a random variable is also a random variable. Okay. Now if I assume the channel is ergodic, that is, it is a fast fading channel. Okay, every instant it is not block fading. It is every symbol duration you can assume that it is varying. So for an ergodic fading channel, the capacity can now be called as ergodic capacity, and it is basically the average. It is the average of the conditional capacity, where the average is taken over the channel power, that is H square. Okay. Okay. So I am taking expectation of the conditional capacity with respect to H square. And in the next statement, what I have done is I have used what is called as a Jensen's theorem. If you remember from information theory, I am not sure whether you are familiar with Jensen's theorem or not. Okay, let me write it down for you. So Jensen inequality says that for a concave function, expected value of a function of a random variable, okay, is less than equal to function of the expected value. Okay. So this is the Jensen inequality. And log is a concave function. So I am drawing the log functions. You see that it goes like this. Now if you are averaging over a certain period, suppose you are taking two points, 1 point here, 1 point here. Any average will lie on the line in between, because averaging is basically you are multiplying by some coefficient. Okay, suppose this is x1 and this point is x2. Then your average is going to be basically x1 plus x2 by 2. So it is a point on the line ax1 plus bx2. Okay, and that is this line, the line joining these 2 points. So now you see any average is going to be less than, so this is the point of the average, okay, and you can see it is going to be less than the value that you would have got if you had put the expectation of E of x. So this is the point here, E of f, okay, E of x is this point and f of ex is this point. You see that? So in a concave function, the average function evaluated at the average is always greater than the extension of the function. Okay, so that's the Jensen's inequality. Here, okay, I am using that here. So I am taking expectation inside. So because it's a function of h square, so the expectation goes there. And you remember that we have said that we are assuming a Rayleigh fading channel. So this value is 1. So it is nothing but the AWGN capacity. So you will get log 2 1 plus gamma. That is your AWGN capacity. So what this shows is the ergodic capacity or the average capacity over a seesaw fading channel is strictly going to be less than the AWGN capacity. The actual ergodic capacity can be found out by finding the distribution of h square. So if we have h is Rayleigh distributed, then f of h square, the PDF of h square is exponential and is given by this formula, and substituting and evaluating, that's how you get the ergodic capacity of a seesaw Rayleigh fading channel. Okay, the next plot actually gives you that. You see that? At the low SNRs here, you see that the AWGN and fading capacity are almost same. But as the SNR increases, you see at 20 dB there is almost, I would say, 0.5 to 1 bit gap at 20 dB. Recollect from the probability of error curve that we had discussed second slide in the first lecture. You remember that AWGN curve goes down straight as exponential. So at 10 dB you have 10 power minus 6, and the Rayleigh fading probability of error goes linearly as 1 by gamma SNR, and that reaches 10 power minus 6 at almost more than 50 dB. Okay, so getting the same probability of error is much more tough on a Rayleigh fading channel as compared to getting capacity. The capacity penalty here is very small. You see that here it is roughly of the order of 3 dB here. This distance, it's roughly around 3 dB. So capacity penalty, average capacity penalty is small, but the probability of error penalty is very large. So that gives you a flavor of capacity of seesaw fading versus non-fading channel. Now let us go one step ahead. I am taking a single input multiple output fading channel. So we have the received signal y as function of h, x, where x is a single variable, and y and eta are NR vectors. Okay, NR rows, one column. So this is a channel model. So what is h? What are the dimensions of h? Remember, x is a scalar. For us it is a single input multiple output. So h would be, it would be NR cross 1 vector. Okay. Now SNR or the instantaneous SNR of this channel is again given by the signal power, that is expected value of E of hx square divided by expected value of noise power. So this you can work it out and get it as norm of h square by gamma square, where the norm of h square is basically sum of squares of elements of the vector or matrix. This is also called as the Frobenius norm, okay, or L2 norm for a vector or matrix. Remember that. You have the SNR multiplied by the varying term, the random variable, which is again a summation of squares of different random, NR random variables. Okay. So now substituting the SNR in the AWGN expression, what you get is the conditional capacity, which is a function of the norm of the channel and the SNR, and is given by this one. Now some of you had asked last class what is an array gain. So here I formally defined the array gain. It is defined as the expectation of ratio of the instantaneous SNR by average SNR. Okay. So in this case you divide by gamma, gamma cancelled. So it is an expectation of capital H. There is a typo here. So it is an expectation of capital H square. So this is again how many NR terms, and each expected value, each of these terms is independent. So the expectation of this is going to be 1. Any doubts there? If not clear, I can write it down for you because I am saying it orally. I am not sure whether you are following this or not. Do you want me to work that out? Okay. So what we now want to show expected value of to norm, the Frobenius norm of the received vector. What is this value equal to? Sum of squares of the individual elements. Okay. So this is what we have. Expectation of this. Now you see each term, each HI is varying independently. So I can write this as, I can take the summation outside. Okay. And then I have now this is the expected value of one channel, and we all know that this is equal to 1. So this is nothing but summation of I equal to 1 to NR 1, and that is nothing but NR. Okay. So this is the array gain of a CMO channel. Now I'll ask you to do a short exercise. Now I'll ask you to do a very short exercise. Suppose instead of a CMO channel, I am assuming a MISO channel, multiple input, single output. So there are NT transmitters and one receiver. You now tell me what is the array gain for this case. Maybe any one of you can just reply in chat and then I can go forward. Good. One answer from TC, that's right. Anybody else? Yes, the answer is going to be NT. Okay, number of transmitters. Right, now going ahead, we are interested in again because this capacity is again a random variable where this is our random variable, more the Frobenius norm of the channel matrix. Okay, here. So we need to average it out. So we need to find out the probability density function of the Frobenius norm. It is well characterized and it is basically given by this formula. It is basically called as the chi-square distribution. Okay, this is a chi-square distribution in NR degrees of freedom. And then averaging out using our expected value summation, this is what is the final ergodic capacity. Remember that we are discussing for an ergodic channel, so it is varying every channel instant, so it is basically a fast fading channel. Okay. Now let us see this expression people have evaluated, but it's a conversion expression, it's a mathematical exercise. I won't want to go into that, but I want to give you the interpretation of what that means. Okay, so next slide I have plotted the CMO and MISO capacities for 3 cases. So you see the CISO channel, it is right below. Remember, it is a fading channel. In the previous graph I had shown you the CISO fading versus non-fading graph. Now this is only a fading channel graph. So the lowest green curve is for the CISO channel. So one transmit, one receive. The red line is 1 cross 2 or 2 cross 1. As an exercise, I would request you to see that the MISO will also have a same capacity. The CMO and MIMO have the same capacity. So they are dual channels. So as an exercise, please work out that the MISO and capacity is the same as CMO capacity. So the red one is for the 2 cross 1 or 1 cross 2 and the blue one is for 1 cross 4. What you see here is the gains, even though we have increased 4 antennas, the gain at 30 dB, the number of bits that you are increasing is roughly, I would say, 3 bits. 4 antennas you have added. At 30 dB you have just increased 3 additional bits. So your throughput has increased by 3 bits by adding 4 antennas, either at the transmitter or at the receiver. So you see that there is some gain, but it's not Too good. Okay. So another important thing that immediately comes is, if I add 8 antennas, what would happen? Am I going to get a gain? So here you see the gain from 1 to 2 is larger, but from 2 to 4 it looks smaller. Here I have added only one antenna, but the gain is quite large. Here I have added 2 antennas from 2 here. You see that? And the gain there is almost similar to the gain here. So I immediately suspect that the gain by increasing the number of antennas is going down, right? So the next plot actually answers that. You see, for a given SNR, I have taken, say, SNR 30 dB. I have plotted as the number of antennas increase from 1 to 8. Now you see that as the number of antennas increase from 1 to 2, the gain is max. From 2 to 3 it comes down. From 3 to 4 it further comes down. Okay, it is going to saturate. Okay, so after a certain point, the adding more number of antennas is not going to give you minimal gain. So adding just antennas at one side is not going to be very useful. We need to do something better. Okay. Now from here we go on to the fixed MIMO channel. A fixed MIMO channel is where there are multiple transmitters, multiple receivers, but H is fixed. It is not varying. It is known. Okay. So towards that end, I will start with a simpler example. Suppose you have L parallel channels. Remember when I introduced the MIMO channel, we had first introduced 2 parallel SISO channels, right? In the same way, rather than have a diagonal, I have L channels and I have collected them together in a matrix form. Okay. Now, the capacity of L parallel channels of this kind is basically summation of the capacity of each of the channels. So that is what it is given here. Hi is the channel coefficient and gamma I is the signal to noise ratio on each of the channels. Let us assume that gamma I is basically equal to gamma by L. So the SNR or the power is equally divided among all the L channels. Okay. So coming back to the equation on the slide, you see that first expression is basically summation of capacity from all the L channels. The second slide, we have used the property of log. That is, log AB is basically equal to sum of log A plus log B. So because of that, applying it in the inverse fashion, I have the summation outside becomes multiplication inside. Okay. The next line basically tells you that this is nothing but the determinant of a channel matrix that is diagonal. Let me draw that for you. So you see, you have basically okay, L parallel SISO channels 1 dash 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 L minus 1 L. So I have L parallel SISO channels. So suppose this is Y1, no, the other way around. What you transmitted is X1, what you received is Y1. So X L minus 1, Y L minus 1. XL, Y of L. Okay. So now I will I'll form the vector V as Y1, Y2, YN. Okay. So in this case, remember that Y1 is H1, X1 plus eta 1. Similarly for YL minus 1, similarly for YL. So using that, now I'll define a diagonal matrix H1, H2, HL. Rest of it is zeros. Okay. This is what you transmit, x1, x2, dash dash dash, xl. Okay. And then you have your noise terms, eta 1, eta 2 and eta l. Okay. So now you see this channel matrix H in this matrix notation for L parallel channels is basically a diagonal matrix. See that? Now it will be simple that just you work out the, now substitute this in the derivation that we have before, right? What do you have? Determinant of I of L plus gamma by L H conjugate. Okay. So this is nothing but a matrix of this form. Determinant of a matrix of this form, 1 plus gamma by L H1 square. Okay. Dash dash dash. So this replicates. And you can see that determinant will be the product of all the diagonal values. Yeah, I apologize for the very, I am not sure whether the writing is very clear for you. Okay, there, that looks much better. You see, so you have a set of diagonal terms and determinant of it is whatever we have in the previous slide. So that's how we get the third line in the equation, this one. It is basically nothing but rewriting the previous equation in a more compact form. Now this writing actually allows us to extend this formula to any MIMO channel. So what we have derived is for a diagonal MIMO channel. Okay. Now what I claim now that this is also the capacity of a fixed channel which is not diagonal. Okay. An arbitrary H that is fixed will also have a similar capacity. In the next slide we will prove that. Okay. So the proof is based on MIMO information theory, or what we call multiple input, multiple output information theory for continuous channels. So what you have is the vector V is circular Gaussian, right? Then the maximal differential entropy is given by log 2 det of pi into E multiplied by the covariance matrix. So these are constant terms. So the important point is of a Gaussian vector V with a covariance matrix gamma, then the differential entropy only depends on the covariance gamma. It does not depend on the mean, etc. And that for a given gamma, Gaussian gives the maximum differential entropy. Okay. So this is a very standard formula. You can see in any of the information theory textbooks. It is derived there. Okay. Now applying it to our general channel, y is equal to hx plus eta, applying that notion of differential information, okay, Ixy, we have is equal to the differential entropy of y minus the conditional differential entropy of with the calculation. What we need to get is the covariance of y. Right? Yes. What would that be? Can anybody calculate it fast? Calculate the covariance of y. Yeah, because this is an see, this information theory is not just applied maths, it is pure maths. So maths you need to work out. If that's where you get the confidence. So I request you to work out. I also will be working it out to you so that you are not confused. That y is an NR cross 1 vector. Assume it is Gaussian. Or actually when you do it, we will do the other way around. Okay. So first let us calculate the differential entropy of y given x. So when y is given x, so your y is equal to hx plus eta. See there, hx is given. Given x is a Gaussian random variable with a mean given by hx. This is the mean value of the random variable. Okay, because it is fixed. X is given, so this becomes the mean of the random variable, and the variance of eta is also, covariance of eta is also the covariance of y. Okay, so let me write it like that. E of y conjugate. Okay, so this would be expected value of yeah. So what we'll have is h x conjugate h conjugate plus eta conjugate. Now assume given x, this value is a constant. So this is the only variable. So what we'll get is e plus okay. So this is a constant term, the expectation comes out, and the expectation of this is what is the covariance matrix of y gamma. So this can be written as Q. So okay, so that you have Q H gamma this, if you are assuming eta as we have assumed AWGN, so each entry is independent. So in this case, this will be basically sigma square I n r. Okay, right. So this is the differential entropy. So in the first case, this we had given the differential entropy of y given x. This is the differential of entropy of given y. Here the differential entropy only depends on eta. Okay, because it is known. And in this case, let me do it a bit again. In order not to confuse you, I am going back. So we are trying to calculate the differential entropy for y given x. Okay, so this is a constant term. So the only variation here is in eta. So this term, so we know that y given x is now a random variable, Gaussian vector, Gaussian random vector with a mean hx and variance equal to variance of eta. So the variance of eta is basically given by sigma I n r. Okay. So substituting in h dy x, you will basically get this covariance value in the differential entropy formula for Gaussian vector. Given the first line of the slide, you basically get the differential entropy for h of y given x. What you have in the second case is for Hd given y, the differential entropy of y. So in this case, this is the general case, the slide typo here, okay. So now because this is an expectation, it goes inside, okay, and if we define Q as the covariance of the input, then this is what is the differential entropy of y. Substituting back in the formula, going back to the slide, okay, substituting back in this formula here, we have Lt given y, Lt y given x, substituting back, and then using the covariance of Q as gamma NT-IN, that's how we actually get the actual derivation of a fixed MIMO channel for an arbitrary H. So you see, what we had derived for L parallel channels, assuming from a matrix notation, actually holds for the general case also. Again, remember, this is for a fixed MIMO channel. Okay, the writing is not so good. Excuse me for that. So what we have is the capacity of a fixed MIMO channel, right? What we are interested in is the capacity of a MIMO fading channel. Okay, what happens in this case? So as in before, the derivation we had is in the previous slide. Here becomes a conditional capacity. It is the capacity which is a function of gamma and the channel H. Okay, it is a conditional capacity, and now we need to average it. Okay, so that's the definition of capacity of an ergodic IID MIMO channel. Each entry of the channel is independent. Then the capacity is defined by taking expectation of the term that we had derived in the previous slide. Okay. Now you see, it is now a function of number of transmit antennas, number of receive antennas, and gamma. NT and NR come in picture because of the HH conjugate term in the definition. Now, remember that slide today we had said that for the CISO AWGN channel, doubling the SNR will actually increase the throughput by 1 bit at high SNRs. Let us see what happens here for the MIMO fading channel. Okay, so again, this, if gamma is large, this IL terms, because they just contribute to 1 to the diagonal terms, can be neglected. So simplifying here, taking the determinant here, what you will see is you will have minimum of NT comma NR log 2 gamma terms, and there will be constant that will depend on L in dash dash dash. Okay, so neglect this IL and just do the find the determinant using the singular variable decomposition of the HH gamma. So you'll see these are all diagonal elements. Okay, let me derive it. So what we need is to find out the expected value of the term INT. This would be INR. There is a typo in the formula there in the slide. This would be INR. Okay, and this would be gamma by NT. So the SNR is divided among NT channels, transmit channels, HH gamma. Okay, so now at high SNRs, because gamma is very much greater, so we can neglect the diagonal values because of INR. So what we have is log of determinant of gamma by NT Now we will use one property. Okay, it is that we will decompose HH Hermitian. So Okay. So where lambda is contains the eigenvalues of the matrix. Now determinant has a property. What is that? Determinant of a matrix A multiplied by a unitary matrix is equal to determinant of A. So determinant is invariant to multiplication by a unitary matrix either on in either side. It is equal to that of AU. Okay. So this formula is used twice applying here. So what you get is basically log 2 determinant of gamma by nt lambda. Now you see lambda is a diagonal matrix whose entries are eigenvalues of the conjugate matrix. Okay. So the determinant inside is nothing but log can be written as product of the eigenvalues lambda I. The number of eigenvalues depends on minimum of the dimensions nt comma nr. Okay. So if nr is greater than nt, then the number of non-zero eigenvalues will only be equal to nt. Okay. And if other way around. Okay. So there will be lambda I non-zero values multiplied by gamma and nt. Now you see that we are going to take expectation of this. So the expectation of this term would, see that this product can be taken out and so you can write it as summation I equal to 1 to minimum of nt and r. Let me write it as just n. So your n is basically minimum of nt comma nr. Okay, log of lambda I gamma by nt. Okay. So using this simplification, what we can show is here on the next line. So now substitute it back here. So this is what you will get. N log 2 gamma. Here. Minimum of nt and r log 2 gamma. Okay. Plus constant, that is because of nt term, etc. So what you see now is, if you double the power, okay, or if you double the SNR, for simplicity case take nt equal to nr is equal to n, then what you see is, by doubling the SNR, you are actually doubling the increasing capacity by n bits. See that? This is important. See, so AW channel doubling the SNR, you get only 1 bit. But MIMO, when you are doubling the SNR, you are actually gaining a minimum of NT NR bits. Okay, so that is a huge increase. So this the next this slide basically gives you the capacity plots in bits per channel use. You see that this is our CISO, the red one, lower one transmit, one receive antenna. As you had seen before, you see for 2, 4, 8, either SIMO or MIMO, the gain is very small. And you see, actually it can be shown as if you have SIMO or MIMO and you keep on increase the number of antennas, it actually just converges to around AWGN capacity. So they are all below the AWGN capacity. See that? Okay? But the moment you have, rather than increasing number of transmit or receive antennas, you increase both. You are increasing one transmit and one receive antenna, you see the gain here. The capacity has increased a significant amount. So for example, at 8 dB signal to noise ratio, what you see, CISO has 4 bits per channel use, 1 cross 1. But MIMO has nearly double. Okay, it is more than 7.5. and if you go to 10 dB, this would be much higher, because you see there are two diverging curves. So the gain will increase. The gain will increase. So similar case, now you have seen, even if 2 cross 2 antennas, you increase the number of, say, keep the number of transmit antennas, increase the number of receive antennas, you see that it is going to converge to the capacity of 2 AWGN channels, 2 CISO channels in parallel. That is how it is going. But if you increase both the number of antennas, 4 cross 4, you see here 8 cross 8, the gain is massive. So that is the prime benefit of MIMO. You are able to now increase the capacity linearly with minimum of number of NT-NR receive antennas. So that is what is called as the benefit or the gain of MIMO. That's why MIMO is going to be in all the future standards, because to support the high throughputs, this is the only way forward. But remember now, what we have derived is the ergodic capacity. The capacity when the channel is changing every instant. Okay, it is not block fading like it is there in the typical channel. It is for a channel that is fading fast. It is varying every time, every channel use. So for one time you transmit something, in the next interval what you are transmitting, the channel has changed. So that is an ergodic channel. But that's not the practical case. The practical case for fixed duration. So what will happen, that we'll go to that in a moment. This is a second plot, gives you a counterpart of what we saw for SIMO or MISO. There you saw that it is getting saturated. But here you see as the array size is increasing, you see a linear increase. So then that can be seen from the equation before. So what you see now is there are two things. One, you get the maximum diversity when the number of transmit and receive antennas are same. And if you keep on increasing one of the antennas, the gain is going to be very small. Okay. So yeah. So now, and you have a short quiz for you. You can take it after the class. We now go to channels that are not ergodic. Now the key idea here is, instead of saying capacity, now we have the mutual information between X and Y as a conditional random variable of, okay, conditional on H. The mutual information between X and Y is now a conditional H. I don't, see, remember in the previous case I said it is capacity because you can optimize that. But here optimization is an open problem. Okay, so that's why I can only say it is a conditional mutual information. So each block, okay, will give us a new conditional mutual information. Okay, it's a random variable. Now for a given information rate R to be transmitted, an important thing is a theoretical limit on the probability of packet or word error. Okay, so define P out or the outage probability as the probability that the conditional information rate is less than a given rate that I have, R, that I have chosen to transmit. Okay, R is the rate I have chosen to transmit, and because the mutual information is a function of H, there is a non-zero probability that is going to be less than R. Okay, I call that as the outage probability. Please note this definition. Okay, outage probability. It is a probability that your mutual information, conditional mutual information, is less than a target rate. Okay, what happens in such a case? By information theory, the rate is greater than what the mutual information that is supported, so the packet is going to be in error. So this is going to, no matter how good a code you use, the best probability of error that you can get is going to be lower bounded by P out. So it cannot be less than P out. Your packet error rate in such a case will always be greater than the outage probability. That is the physical interpretation of the outage probability. Okay. Now let us take the seesaw case and see what is the outage probability. So in this case we have a channel that is random, but it is being fixed for the channel is fixed for a long duration, okay, for a packet length. That second point is clear. I have been making that again and again. This is a non-ergodic, slow or quasi-static fading channel. Different people will use different notations, okay. And the maximal mutual information that can be supported by at a given channel realization H is given by log of, okay. The third point I have already made clear. For this H, if the mutual information is less than R, then whatever code you use, the decoding error probability cannot be made small, okay. So the packet error rate is going to be lower bounded by the outage probability, and such a system is said to be in outage, okay. Remember that non-ergodic channels, we previously said they were diversity limited channels. Now we say these are channels where there is a non-zero probability of getting an outage. That is, no transmission is going to be possible. For a Radic channel, okay, the H are distributed as complex Gaussian with variance 1, and in this case the outage probability is given by 1 minus exponent. Just substitute the equation and do the integration. This is what you will get. You want me to derive that? It's just straightforward. Just substitute and do it. I think we don't have time. I have many slides to cover. So it's a simple exercise. Okay. Use this definition of P outage defined in the previous slide. Use the probability PDF of H given here. I have shown that H square will be exponential distributed. Substitute, rearrange, and this is what you will get. Okay. At large SNRs, you can use the series expansion of exponential. Then the 1 terms cancel, and what will dominate is the first term, and this is what you will get. So at large SNR, the outage is now given by 2 per R minus 1 by gamma. Okay. The last class, remember that what we had said was, first I derived the probability or error for an erasure channel. Then I said that for a fading channel, the erasure, okay, the probability of error is obtained by just substituting instead of epsilon 1 by gamma. So now by deriving the outage, we are now in a position to say that this is how we are getting it. Okay. So now what we have got is P outage, okay, for a Rayleigh fading channel is very tightly approximated as 2 per R minus 1 by the SNR. Okay. I can rewrite this. I can say this is proportional to 1 by gamma, right? Now I'll say outage is nothing but erasure. If the channel is in outage, I say there is no communication, non-reliable communication possible, so I say it is an erasure. So our epsilon that we had defined previously is now proportional to 1 by gamma. Okay. So with this simple thing, the probability of error expression that we had derived throughout for the erasure channel directly can be adapted for fading channels. Okay. Now remember, we had said for the diversity case epsilon tends to 0. So that implies gamma tends to infinity, right? Probability of error we had said was for the case of repetition code we said was epsilon power L. Then we said the repetition code for a fading channel is basically given by, we said it is proportional to 1 by gamma power, right, L. So substituting epsilon is proportional to 1 by gamma in the expression here, you will get the probability of error. So I see, So now I have clarified one assumption that we had made previously, okay, in the last class. So I think you are clear now. There is one more thing that I am missing link from last class. I will clear that in the next class. Okay. Okay. So now you see the concept of outage has now allowed us to actually link whatever we derived for error channel for fading channels from a probability of error perspective. Now let us go back to the capacity perspective. That is the topic of discussion for this lecture. Okay. Then another thing that you should remember. Second slide, we said the probability of error is going down as 1 by gamma, right? Now we are showing that probability of outage is also going by as 1 by gamma. So it confirms our belief, okay, that we had argued. Now we are from a strong mathematical background, we can say that for a wireless channel, the fading is the one that dominates because the probability of errors is proportional to 1 by gamma is also the probability that the channel is in outage. Okay. So that's the second thing that we are confirming mathematically. Now from this discussion, there is one important thing we can conclude that coding can average out the AWGN noise, but it cannot average out the slow fading noise. This is because coding is designed to take care of the AWGN noise. It doesn't average out the fading noise. So for that we have already seen the answer is diversity, multiple replicas. Okay. Let us go forward. Now we have a very strange case. If the channel is block fading, even in fact, even for the both for the ergodic and non-ergodic channel, the capacity in the AWGN sense is going to be 0 because you cannot guarantee a given rate. For the ergodic channel, you can guarantee an average rate, but for the non-ergodic channel, the variations are going to be very slow. So speaking of a ergodic capacity would be very vague in such a case. It would not be a practical measure. So something practical. Okay. So in this case, yeah, the first point in this slide makes a very strong, important statement. In AWGN case, remember that in AWGN case, you can always guarantee that your rate is less than capacity. There exists a code which will take the probability of error to 0. But the same cannot be guaranteed for fading channels, either ergodic or non-ergodic. Okay. The second point clarifies that the capacity of both fading and fast fading from the traditional sense is 0. But for the ergodic channel, the average capacity is non-zero. The same cannot be said for the slow fading non-ergodic channel. So what can we do there? We come up with another definition, that is what is called the outage capacity. Remember that previously we have defined outage probability, and that has allowed us to link erasure channel to fading channel. Now we are speaking of outage capacity. So what is an outage capacity? It is the largest transmission rate R such that outage probability is less than a given value epsilon. Okay, and so the outage capacity is a function of epsilon, C epsilon. Putting in the definition of P out and rearranging, this is what is the capacity of or outage C epsilon outage capacity for any channel. Okay, where F is the CDF, cumulative distribution function. Remember, it is not PDF, but it is CDF. The same approach can be applied to MIMO also. So now the capacity can be replaced by the mutual information, which is a function of the covariance of the transmitted signal Q and epsilon. Okay. So the outage probability is now defined as P log det INR plus HQ gamma etc. Even for this case, as I have told you, I am not sure, nobody knows what Q is the one that can minimize the power allocation. Okay, it is conjectured that the uniform power allocation will actually minimize the P out, but that's not. It is an open problem. Okay. Similarly, you can define a C outage probability. So I am not plotting the C outage probability. What I have now is the curve outage probability curve for MIMO. So what you see is this is the EBB0, this is the probability of outage. Okay. So as the signal to noise ratio increases, this is for 1 bits per second channel use. So this is the red line is for a fixed capacity, a fixed rate, 1 bit per channel use, 4x4 antennas. So you see, as the SNR increases, as the SNR is increasing, the probability that you are going into outage is decreasing. That is one thing. Now from right to left, you see this is the red one is 2 cross, this red one, the green one is the same channel, but what you have changed is the bits per channel use. So if you are increasing the rate that you want, and you see the outage probability is increasing. You see that? So at suppose 4 dB, you see the outage probability is increasing. This is the increase in the outage probability. Okay. Now across antennas, let us say take 1 bits per channel use, 2x2 versus 4x4. Okay. So this curve versus this curve. So you see there is a huge advantage in terms of reduction of outage when you increase the number of antennas. You see there is a huge decrease in for the same bits per channel use, there is a huge decrease in the outage probability. So for the 2x2, 1 bit per channel use, here, it is this curve. Sorry for the mistake. This is the curve, blue one. Okay, and this the cyan one. So you see at an EB/N0 of 4 dB, for 4 transmit 4 receive antennas, the outage probability is 10⁻⁴, while for 2x2 it is almost, I will say, 6 into 10⁻². So there is a huge increase in probability of outage by decreasing the number of antennas. Conversely, increasing the number of antennas results in a huge decrease in the outage probability. Okay. So as an exercise, I will request you to derive the C epsilon outage capacity for MIMO, general MIMO channels for at least 2x2 and 4x4, and see how the curves are. Okay. In case you want to make things clear. From here on, I'll go to a third case. See, in the previous two cases, I have assumed that the channel H is only known at the receiver, and it is not known at the transmitter. That's why in the derivation, when we took Q, we actually substituted it as I by N, sigma NT, okay, because we don't know the channel, we don't know the channel at the transmitter, so the best policy is to transmit equal power on all the NT transmit antennas. So that's why we assume Q is equal to INT, right? INT multiplied by gamma by NT. Okay, that was the derivation. Now, what happens when the case that the full channel is known at the transmitter? It is known already at the receiver, but we say that it's also known at the transmitter. Get the point? So we are making one more simplification here, that the channel is known both at the transmitter and receiver. It adds a penalty because you have to make some extra effort so that the channel is known at the transmitter also. At the receiver you can estimate it, but at the transmitter you need one feedback channel, or you'll have to assume reciprocity and then again send pilot signal, so it is estimated at both sides. Okay, so it will involve extra effort. But let us see what this extra effort will give us. So consider a deterministic H channel. We have a power constraint, that is total transmit power from all the antennas. Now X is a NT vector. So the power constraint is total transmit power cannot be greater than P. Okay. Now let us define signal value decomposition of H as U lambda V Hermitian or V conjugate. Okay, this is a very standard definition. U and V are unitary matrices of dimensions INR and INT respectively. Using this, will substitute back into the previous channel, that is y is equal to hx plus eta. You see that we multiply y by u Hermitian or the conjugate of u to remove one term from the channel matrix X. So what we have is lambda. This should be capital lambda. It's a typo here. Okay. This is capital lambda. Okay. So you are multiplying with u Hermitian. So u Hermitian is INR. So that term is missing. So what you have is lambda v times x. Now let us assume that a transmitter, because it knows the channel, is pre-coding by not transmitting x, but is transmitting v conjugate multiplied by x. So it's transmitting x tilde. Okay. Or other way to look around is, suppose this is represented as x tilde. So now what you see, your y tilde is capital lambda times x tilde plus noise terms multiplied by unitary matrix. So unitary matrix basically is covariance is invariant to unitary matrix, so the covariance remains same. So previously the noise terms are independent, so the new noise terms, because multiplication of the unitary matrix is also going to be independent. It's a simple exercise, just work it out. Okay. So what that means is, the other thing is, even the Frobenius norm or the L2 norm of the vector x tilde is equal to x, because Frobenius norm also is invariant to unitary transformation. So whatever is the Frobenius norm for x tilde is also the Frobenius norm for x square. So the power constraint directly applies. And taking those two things into account, because we have assumed that there will be n is the rank of h, it is equal to minimum of NTNR. So we have small n independent channels. So what we have done is, by multiplying at the receiver with a u Hermitian and at the transmitter by pre-coding with a function of the unitary matrix V, what we get is we have diagonalized the channel. So what in effect we have is n, small n channel, where n is the rank of h, it is equal to minimum of NTNR for a random h. Okay. There is another important thing that we get from this diagonalization. What do you see there? There is no coding gain across streams. Okay. Across the streams. These streams are in the eigen directions of the H conjugate matrix. Okay. So these are signals. X1 tilde you can assume as being transmitted along the first eigenvector of this matrix. X2 tilde is being transmitted along the second eigenvector of this matrix. Okay. So on and so forth. But there is no gain in coding across stream because they are independent. This is from a capacity perspective. Okay. So operational meaning is you are doing beamforming, where along each eigenvector you are sending xk tilde. So they are totally small n independent streams that are orthogonal, because VKs are orthogonal. Okay. Let each stream has a power Pk. So remember that previously we had total power as P. Now I say let us have a power Pk across each stream. Then and rate Rk. So each channel can offer a rate Rk that is less than Ck, where Ck is the capacity given by this expression. Okay, so I have just calculated a signal to noise ratio here for each of the channels that was derived in parallel channel in the previous slide. Okay, and I put into the expression here. Now there is one additional constraint. Remember that. What is that? The sum total power is going to be less than P. So you can also see as summation of Pk's is less than equal to P. That is the constraint. Now next slide. See, till now the derivation I have done, we have done assuming, right, H, we have done assuming H is known both at the transmitter and receiver. Okay, for a fixed H. Now let us see what happens in an IID Rayleigh case. Okay, I am taking a sum capacity, average sum capacity. So this is ergodic capacity. Okay, so what you see is the sum capacity is a high value. Okay, and the contributions from different modes or different vectors. There are 4 modes for a 4x4 transmission. So what you see here is sum of first eigenvector, second eigenvector, third eigenvector and fourth eigenvector. So you see when the mirror array size is small or even the array size is say for 4x4 vector, you see for the fourth eigen mode the contribution is small. It is larger here for the second eigen mode. This is in the order of, if you arrange in the order of magnitude. So first eigenmode has the largest eigenvalue, second largest eigenvalue, third largest eigenvalue and the smallest eigenvalue. So you see that because of this the contribution of the largest eigenvalue to the capacity is the largest and the smaller is lowest. Okay, and for 3 because there is no third eigenvalue, there is 0 here, so on and so forth. So you see the contribution from different eigen modes is going to be different. So it doesn't make sense to divide power equally across each eigen mode. We need to do it intelligently. Okay, and that is what is called as the water filling. So what we have, we want to maximize the sum capacity subject to the constraint that the sum power is less than Pk. Okay. Now I will show you how I am going from the first slide to the second slide. It is basically quite straightforward. So I want to maximize the first equation, that is summation capacity Ck which are function of Pk. Rest of it is fixed. Okay, subject to the constraint. So I have a Lagrangian multiplier that sum of Pk is less than P. Okay, so this is what is called as the constraint optimization problem in Pk. So now you differentiate with respect to Pk. So differentiate, partial differentiation of L with respect to Pk and equate it to 0. That's how you will get the first expression. Okay. So the optimal capacity, solve this equation, straightforward, because it's log function, you will get 1 by, and then it's quite straightforward, just do it. It is a simple differentiation exercise. So the optimal Pk by doing this is what you get as 1 by lambda remember that lambda k square is different from lambda. I should have actually put a Lagrangian multiplier as mu, so it would be mu 1 minus 2 sigma square, because lambda k we have used as the eigenvectors of H Hermitian. Okay, so mu is the Lagrangian. This term is called what is called as the water level. Differentiating same Lagrangian with respect to the Lagrange multiplier mu, you will get the second, and equating to second equation, you will get the second equation, that is k equal to 1 to n Pk is equal to P. So that's how you get the second equation. I think the third graph here is not very clear to you. So you see this line here. So now you see I have a small n is equal to 4. There are 4 channels. So you see this term. Okay. This is written as n naught k by lambda k square. So for the first channel is like this. It is large. For the second channel it is like this. For the third channel it is all like this. Okay. And for the fourth channel it is this much. and for the fifth channel it is again large. Now the power I have is P is small. So when I start filling, first I will fill here, then I will, once I get this, I will fill both these, and this is the present water level. Okay, so this term 1 by lambda or 1 by mu actually gives you the water level. Okay, so as you keep pouring water here, if you had more P or larger, this would further increase, and okay, you would start transmitting on this mode also. There is one term that is missing here. This square is wrong. This should be plus. There is a typo here. Okay. So this plus means your power cannot be negative. So as long as 1 by mu is greater than this, then there is a non-zero power allocated. If this term is less than this term, okay, then this term would be negative. In such a case, this positive will ensure that this term is 0. Okay. So I will define for a scalar a plus is nothing but equal to 0 is a is less than 0 or is equal to a otherwise. Okay, that is the definition of a plus. So now you see that as you increase the power, okay, more and more it becomes feasible to transmit on more and more modes. So if you increase the power more, so then once the motor reaches this level, you will see these terms for the fifth and mode also becomes non-zero, so it becomes feasible to transmit here also. But the third mode, because the 2 sigma square by lambda k term is quite large here, it becomes feasible to transmit on this only when your water level is greater than this value. Okay, so you see that solution of this is again a nonlinear problem. It is solved iteratively. So the important point that I want to make clear is it is as if you have a water tank with different levels. So in the first block, the water level is at this, the floor is at this level. Second block, the flow level is here. Third block, the flow level is here. So this is a variable flow tank. Okay, the bottom is not constant. It's not constant. It is going up and down like this. Okay, so in such a tank, if you pour water, first the water would go to the lowest position. It will fill the lowest position. After this level, both of these levels are same, so it will start filling both of these, and it will keep increasing, so on and so forth. So that's why this solution is called as a water filling solution. So this is the second important point for the case when the channel state information is available at the transmitter, right? From a capacity perspective, it is not feasible, or it doesn't give you much gain by coding across different modes. First thing. Second thing, each mode contributes a different level. So you need to do power allocation. Uniform power allocation is not suitable. That uniform power allocation follows a water filling algorithm. So that's why for the case when the channel is known at the transmitter, you need to go do water filling. Okay. Now let us see what happens at a high SNR. What would you expect? SNR is very large. So what I am claiming in the first point in this bullet, in this slide, is I am saying that it would be suitable to equally divide on the power among all antennas, approximately. Okay. So in this case, just summation of Ck, this term, one term would be small, so it would basically be n times log of P by sigma square plus the term due to the different lambda case. Okay. For ergodic capacity, you just need to average out with respect to lambda case. Okay. For outage capacity, you will need to find the PDF of lambda case. Okay, PDF and CDF. So it's non-trivial to find out the eigenvalues. People have done it, but it's a very lengthy derivation. If you are interested, you can actually refer to Teletas capacity paper that I have referred previously. Okay. So here this is just straightforward from, so I am expanding the expression of Ck, then I am neglecting 1 because this is quite large, P is very large, so this is what you get. So this is nothing but your SNR term, n log 2 SNR. Okay. So going back, remember for the ergodic case also we got a same expression plus the other terms. Okay. So the other terms come because of averaging out these terms. This term is common. Now defining SNR as P by sigma square, you will be able to correlate what we did for the MIMO ergodic case for large SNRs. Okay. So from a capacity perspective, what you see is the channel offers n degrees of freedom, that n is rank of H, because it is now a total, see from the probability of error of perspective, you had total NT, NR different random variables that were required to get the Y signal. Okay. So that was the total diversity available there. But from a capacity perspective, the degrees of freedom is now small n, because that is the number of independent channels you have. So you cannot, there is no sense transmitting more than small n different streams. Okay. So that's why I say the degree of freedom from a capacity perspective is small n. So these are the n naught by lambda square. These are going to be very small. Okay, compared to the power. So this gap means it is large. The power is very large compared to these values. Okay, the second term in the optimal P derivation. So if they are very small, they are almost all equal to P by n. So it is as if you are equally dividing power among all of them. Get the point? This scheme that we have defined just previously is also called as the SVD MIMO. It is a capacity achieving scheme. Okay, and in this plot there are two things I have done. For example, for the red one, 4x4 MIMO, the solid line is without water filling, so the power is equally divided. Okay, the dashed line is with the water filling. So what you see is at high SNR both of them are merging, but there is a significant gain at the lower SNR. Okay. Similar, but take the case of 4x2, the dark green line. You see that water filling really doesn't make much of a difference. I would request, if you are following, I would request an answer here. If any of you have any idea why that would be happening. 4x2. Okay. You see whether water filling and no water filling, both of them are going to be very similar. I will give you a chance to think and answer. Okay. Coming back, for the 2x2 case, blue line, you see that there is a very small gain at the lower SNR, but the higher SNR, both of them are similar. So that actually justifies our claim in the previous slide that we said at a high SNR, even though you have an expression for water filling, it really doesn't make sense to do water filling. Just divide the power equally the way you did when the channel was not known at the transmitter. So the gain only is at the low SNRs. A request, okay, find out. Yeah, TC is doing very well. I see somebody is answering every question, so I am very happy about that. Even last class there were some very nice questions. I hope two of them I have answered more clearly today. I answered in because I didn't develop the concept of outage there, so I had to do it a very different manner there. Good. So now I would also request that the way we have done here for the case that the SNR is large, I would request you to justify the next diagram, this diagram. Okay. For the case when SNR is very small, okay, justify the difference mathematically. Okay, that's the third exercise I am giving you. So I have given you 3 exercises this class. Okay, so with that I think there are again 2 quizzes that I am expecting this class. Quiz 3 and 4. Previous class I had requested 2 quizzes. I will summarize what we have done in this class. We have seen the CISO capacity. Okay. Then we have seen the CISO capacity for a fading channel. We saw there is a loss. Okay. Then we found out the MIMO capacity when for a given channel. Then we came to the concept of ergodic capacity both for the CISO case and then for the MIMO case, right? And then we showed that there is a significant increase in ergodic capacity on the average both when the number of transmit and receive antennas are same. Okay, we showed that the capacity MIMO increases as minimum of NT and R, and then we said it is for a given number of antennas, the maximum gain you get when you are increasing the number of receive antennas up to the point when NT is equal to NR, and after that we are actually increasing actually saturates the curve. In between we have also derived the MISO case. No, we have derived the SIMO case, and I have asked you to do the MISO case as an exercise. We have defined array gain formally, okay, from an SNR perspective. Now, very short question at this point. I'll ask you to tell me what is the array gain for a MIMO channel. What is the array gain for a MIMO channel? See, remember, we had told that for the SIMO case, the array gain is NR because it is the average of gain in SNR as compared to the average SNR. Okay, I had defined that in the SIMO case. Then for the MISO case, I think TCC replied that it was NT, and that's correct, right? So what happens for the MIMO case? You have NT and R antennas. What is the array gain? Yes. Anybody? You can reply by chat. Nobody? Okay, take it as an exercise. I was expecting an answer. PCP said number of independent antennas. Do you mean number of independent modes? For the SVD, when the both transmitter and receiver are known. Okay, another thing, what do you think? When the channel is known at the transmitter, would it be different or would it be same? First case, channel is only known at the receiver. Second case, channel is known both at the transmitter and receiver. Will there be any difference in the array gain? Right, now PCPY has come correct. The array gain is NT into NR. Okay, you can just substitute there. You see that the average SNR is basically again Frobenius norm of capital H into gamma. Expectation of that because each term is Gaussian random variable with unit variance. So summation of all of them will basically give you NT into NR. That's correct. Okay, STC, I will answer your question in the question round. I am summarizing. So your question is very basic and it is, we'll address it later. So after that, having introduced MIMO, I have given you an exercise that you find out the outage capacity expressions for the MIMO channel. Then we went to the case when the channel is known as the transmitter also. Then we saw that one immediate advantage is you can diagonalize the channel. So it looks like actually the channel is composed of minimum of NT and R independent channels. Okay. So from a capacity perspective, there is no gain in coding across these each modes. You have to code separately. Okay, that was one gain. Then we showed that actually at high SNRs, knowing the channel at the transmitter gives you little or no gain at all. Okay, so that's how we have gone through in this lecture. The third exercise I have given is, I have asked you to prove that at low SNRs, it really matters. Okay, water filling really matters. So that was the summary for today, and we have really seen that by increasing number of antennas, gain in capacity is going to be huge. From 1 bit we are gone to n bits, where n is minimum of NTNR. So if you have to transmit to receive antennas, how much would be the increase in capacity? By doubling the SNR, how much would be the increase in capacity if you have 2 cross 2 antennas? Yes, at least somebody. No, yes, it is n bits, but now I am saying 2 cross 2, so it is going to be n is 2 because 2 transmit, 2 receive antenna. So you are getting an increase in throughput of 2 bits, right? It is going to be 2 bits. If it is 4 cross 4, the increase will be 4 bits, right? So it's going to increase linearly. So that is why MIMO is a very powerful tool. Okay, so tomorrow's class I will basically introduce space-time codes. So that is going to give me, for that I will basically go to the diversity order. What we have now done is the multiplexing gain. Remember that. Okay, what we have seen is the degrees of freedom n, small n is, oh I have not linked that, so I will link that in next class. Okay, so that's one link I will do. Then second link I will show is what sort of coding is required to actually achieve the diversity gain. Yes, so now I will open the floor for questions. I see there is one question already from STCET. See, the noise floor is always there. It is there as power by signal to noise ratio is basically power by noise. So 2 by sigma square. I have done it so many times throughout the derivation. So that's how the noise floor will contribute. Yeah, KSRCT. Your question was capacity of MIMO is same for dynamic and non-dynamic. What is dynamic and non-dynamic? I have defined ergodic and non-ergodic. So could you be please specific what you mean by dynamic and non-dynamic? Capacity wise, the classification of MIMO I have given as ergodic and non-ergodic, or you can take it as slow and fast fading. Okay. So the last slide that I have shown you, see the last slide? Yeah. Okay, this slide basically answers the question. You see, we have shown for high SNRs that equal SNR, equal division among all the modes is going to be same. So this capacity with water filling and without water filling is merging at high SNR. But at low SNR there is going to be a difference. Okay. So I hope that answers your question. KSRCT, I hope that answers your question, right? The second slide I have shown that high SNRs there is no gain, low SNRs there is going to be a gain. PCP, yes, I have given you as an exercise. I want the answer from your side whether the capacity of MISO is same as SIMO. If at all, on what? That I want you to do. Okay, that's an exercise. I hope you will give me the answer. So you can include these 3 questions in the assignment. Okay, the 5 questions. Yes, anybody else? Any further questions? STCET. See, go and see, I will take you to the derivation. See there. For the case when the channel is known as a transmitter, the noise, additive noise from the channel comes into picture here, okay, 2 sigma square. It is basically contributing to the threshold above which only putting power on this mode is going to give you advantage. Otherwise there is going to be no advantage. Okay. So this you can think of as the effective noise floor that is seen for a given eigen mode. Okay. So this term is basically the noise floor. So a noise density you typically take as N0, flat, white spectrum. So that's how it is. So you can take 2 sigma square is equal to N0 if that is your confusion. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, PCPY we are considering high SNR because to see that at high SNR, it really doesn't matter whether you want, whether you know which direction to transmit or not, because the SNR is so high that it is sufficient to transmit equal power in all directions. So if you are a very good SNR, there is no point in asking the receiver to send the channel information at the transmitter. So that saves additional work. So that's why it is important to see what happens at high SNR. That's why we have addressed that. Okay. See if the channel is correlated, TCE. We have not actually said whether it is correlated or uncorrelated, right? Because correlation or non-correlation depends on the, go back here. I am taking you to the original definition. See here, in that when the channel is not known at the transmitter, you see the capacity, it is independent of whether H is correlated or uncorrelated. What we have plotted is for correlated channel. Okay. Now comparing from a correlated to an uncorrelated case, as long as the eigenvalues are same, okay. So, or what I will say is the average power in the matrix is going to be same, correlation is not, total power in the channel, okay, or the diagonal elements of the correlation is going to be same, it is not going to matter. Because you see, even if it is correlated, you can diagonalize this H Hermitian, okay. So correlation should not matter so much. That's what I would say. Provided you compare with two channels with the same trace, okay. PCP, I have already answered your question, how is generally channel state information derived at the receiver transmitter. So typically what you do is at the receiver, before transmitting the bit, the transmitter transmits a pilot signal. So based on that, the channel is estimated at the receiver, it is quantized and sent back to the channel or to the transmitter side over a separate channel that is called as the control channel, okay. So it requires an extra effort. It is not always feasible, but that's how, but current LTE etc. does have the feedback provision. So it is practical. Yes, any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I hope you will enjoy the 3 exercises for assignment that I have asked you to do. We'll meet next Monday, same time. Okay, thank you.